morning, folks. Welcome to the show. So today, last week I was going to try and finish off the boxes, but we never got there, and I don't want to do the whole lot of the work outside of the show, so that at least you get an idea of actually how we get about the boxes, how we get them finished and so forth. So I stopped there, and we'll continue this week, and hopefully we'll get everything pretty much done. Those of you in lockdown, good luck. We're in with you now, so everybody seems to be all locked down, and we've got lots to do. Unfortunately, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to take a bit of a break. I need to develop the next project, and it's going to take me a little bit of effort and a little bit of time to get timber, due to things not being able to move around a bit. So we're going to, we'll take the break, and we'll come back to you 15th, is it? 5th of September, and hopefully in that time I'll have something really exciting for you to have a look at. So this week what we're going to do is we're going to finish off the 2 boxes, or pretty much most of the stuff that's done, so that you get an idea of how to get them finished. Those of you who've seen it all, it's going to be a revision for you. There will be a couple of little tips that I'm going to sort of add in as we go. But anyway, we'll go from there. Now, when you make a box, make these lovely little boxes, and there's always something in the box that causes you a little bit of grief. Now, well, not always, but most of the time. I tend to have a little conniption every now and then, and I found one in this box that, well, I was going to put the finish on. I probably still will, but I found one on this one here that I'm going to show you how to fix. And I'll just go to that camera there. You can see in this hole here, you can see the hole is not actually in the middle of where the screw is. You can just see it. Okay, so that has to be repaired. I don't want to put the screw in there, because what that will do, if I put the screw in where that hole is, what it's going to do is going to skew the hinge sideways, and therefore when we close the box, it's not going to be flush on the ends. And so we have to fix that before we actually go too far. I was a bit peeved about that, because I really wanted to get this box finished today, but we'll do the best we can anyway. So this is how we fix it. So the first thing is we're going to dismantle it all, pull it all apart, take all the bits out. Remember, this box was the one that we had the golf balls in last week, and it's the one in the photo. Just need that to get that out. And then we're going to, which screwdriver do I need? This one here. Let's go to this camera so you can see what I'm doing. You need to make sure that you remember which hole you have to repair. And you can see I've got the 4 holes, those 4 here. It's this one here that I have to repair. So this is how I go about that. I need to use a piece of material that's pretty close to the colour of the box. So I've got another piece of rose mahogany that the box was made out of, and it's just a little square piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen the end of that like you would sharpen a pencil. Now I could go to my pencil sharpener I could go to my pencil sharpener up on the wall there and just sharpen it if I like, but that's not going to give me the right angle for that size screw hole. Okay, the pencil sharpener, of course, a sharp pencil is, go back to the camera, a sharp pencil is actually not the right shape for the screw that's going to go in there. And you can see the screw is quite a different shape. So we want to make sure that the hole, all of the hole, is filled up. You don't want any air gaps underneath the top section. So just swing around to here and this is how I do it. Right. So that looks pretty close to the shape that I want. So let's go back over to here. I'm just going to fit that in there, so that fits really nicely in the hole. It fills up the hole because it's not moving very much and I can't move it. So now just going to get a chisel and I'm just going to nip that bit off the end. We don't need much of it. And so as you can see, it's quite a small piece of timber, it's not very big. I have a friend who carries a box of matches in his pocket, and he, go to here, if he has to repair a hole, then he just gets the match out and whittles the end of the match, sticks it in the hole and then fixes it. Just does exactly the same as this. And you can see that's fitted into there. Where did I put my chisel? Just want to press it down. And that's filled the hole. The super glue is quite good for this. It's not going to move anywhere. Just want to clean off the excess super glue. Just let that sit there. Now if I had a spray bottle of hardener, I would just give it a squirt and that would be almost instantly ready for repairing. So it's just a matter of getting out of the way. I need to run the camera. And so all I need to do now is just use my chisel and just very carefully cut through that. You can't really use a flat saw on that because the rebate of for the hinge gets in the way. So I'm just using the edge of a sharp chisel. Just want that to dry a little bit more. now that I have that flat on the bottom of the trench or the rebate, I can just leave that. I can just leave that to dry, or a little bit more to reset, and go on with the rest of the project. So if you just hang on a sec, I've just got to turn a light on. We haven't got the power plugged into that one, so I'll just go back to here. I just need to turn a bit more light on so you can see what's going on. Is that better? Oh, gee, it's me. Okay, so there's the repair there. If you can see that, you can probably see that a little bit better now that I've got some light on it. Now the stain from the glue is not going to affect it. I've just got a little bit more in there I have to clean off. The beauty about the super glue is that the stain will be the same colour as the finish we put on there anyway, so you won't actually see any of that. Could give it a little sand if I want, but there's no need to at this stage. As you might be aware, that's going to be covered up by the hinge anyway. Okay, so that will go back into there like so, and then I can re-drill. So now we'll just put that back together. Like so. Why do I need a note? Fix it. Now when I put these back together, at this stage I don't always put all the screws in until such time as I'm ready to finish the box. So there we have it. I've repaired it, still fits back into where it should go, and looks quite nice. So from here, what we need to do is we need to start thinking about fitting the latch. I've just got to change this screw out of here. I think that went in the right place. That's perfect. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fit the latch. Now last week I showed you a number of latches. We had this big wide one, this one here, and we had the little one. So what we have to do is we have to work out which one of these would look best on a box this size. As you can see, on this box here, I've got this wide latch, which is the one that we showed you there. So it's a wide latch. This box here, being a bit bigger, would look silly with a little latch like that on it, right? So the bigger the box, obviously the bigger the latch sometimes looks better. Sometimes a small one looks good. It depends on how you see things. So I think what we'll do with this one is we're going to put this one on here, and this little one I'll put on this box. So we have that one, and this one being a fatter box looks quite nice with just that on there. So that's what's going to happen. So that'll go on there. So we'll fit that, and then we'll go through some sanding and so forth. So depends on how long it takes us to get that fitted. I'll just shift all this stuff out of the way. Always a good idea to make sure all your bits and pieces are together. You start losing bits and pieces, all sorts of stuff happens. And you have to remake things. How do I know that? Sometimes that happens to me. So, ruler. Now, the thing about this little lock has a ball bearing on the bottom that catches on the top edge of on this edge in here. Right? It has a spline or a little spigot that sits up. That goes into that hole. Right, so it sits in like that. Now the thing about it is, look how close the holes are to the top edge. So they're really, really close. Can't get a focus on it? Yeah, too far. Okay, just there. Maybe on the white top.
Yeah, that might be better.
That might be better?
Yeah.
There you go. So what you can see there is the screw holes are going to be really close to the top edge. Just bring it up a little. They're going to be really close to the edges of the box. So you have to be really, really careful about how you place those. And when you screw the holes, they've got to be in exactly the right spot. So it's a really delicate operation. You need to take a bit of care with it. Okay, now I've got the hinges on there still. I'm going to leave them on there because I want the box to sit in its natural place. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp it to here, so the hinges don't scratch on the bench. So what we have to do is we have to work out a way of doing that. Okay, so I'll put that there. So it gives me a soft base, so I'll clamp that on. I could take it to the vise over in the corner there and do that, but quicker to do it this way. Like so. And now I can clamp that onto there and it will sit nice and soft. Okay, so it's quite a simple operation, but right now we'll find the centre. Come in with that. So what I'm doing is finding my centre. So I've got 196. Just want to write that down so that I've got it. Make sure I got that right. 196, 197 it is. Which gives me a 94, 93 and a half is my centre. Okay, so I've got my centre there. And that will fit on top of there. And this one will fit onto here. Okay, so that's giving me an idea of where things go. What I want to do is I want to make sure that the top edge of that is flush with the top edge of my box. And the bottom edge of this one is at the bottom edge of the top piece. Okay, so that's got to fit there. So the easiest way to do that to start with is to find your centre, set that in place there. And just to check it to make sure that you've got your distances right, measure to the edge. It's 93 to the edge on that side. And it's 93 and a half there, so I could probably take it a tiny little bit this way. Now, how do we mark those holes without moving everything? We're going to tape it in place. So just a little bit of tape. Now, like I say, this is the fiddly bit. This is the bit that this is just painter's tape. And I want to tape it in place because I'm going to drill and screw it while it's in situ. So I'll cut myself a strip like so. Straight over the top, but you need to make sure that your piece of tape is thin enough so that you can access the holes without having to fiddle around trying to adjust the tape. It keeps moving. I will get it. Like so. Open the box and fold that around underneath and just make sure it is sitting flat on the bottom of the box so that when we look at it you can see that it's sitting flat. Oh, I was pointing at the camera. So we want it sitting flat on the bottom like so. Taped in place. Like that. Just make sure that's flush. And you can't move that anywhere. It won't go anywhere. It should sit perfectly flush. So, now we just drill it. Close that up. Just put a clamp on there to hold that so that it doesn't move. But I'm only holding it in place. It's not as if I have to squeeze it up to, it's not as if I have to squeeze it really tight to get it to stay in place. And so that's taped in the right spot. Now, bradawl. When you put this in its hole, you make sure that that is dead centre. So I just mark it to start with in the hole. Just check that I've got it right. I want something to guide the drill bit when I drill the hole for the screw. Also want the screw to be right in the middle. They're tiny screws, so I'm not pressing very hard. Cedar, it's going to be easy to work. So just come in there. Just making sure I've got that in the centre. Check it. Now, the reason I didn't use this fancy little gadget is because it just won't fit where I need it to go. All right? And besides that, the drill bit on the end of it is way too big. So somebody said last week that it's really hard to find small drill bits for screws. You're quite right. It's quite difficult to find enough, the right size screws for all of the tiny screws that we use in box making. So I've just got a set of drill bits that go down to 1.5 mil or something like that, very, very small anyway. And this drill bit is 1.5. So as you can see, it's quite tiny. The screws that I'm using are equally tiny. I've got 7mm material here, and I don't want to have a screw go all the way through. So I'm just making sure make sure that your drill, just go back here, make sure your drill is vertical, so you haven't got it tilted away or anything like that when you do it. You can take it to the drill press and do it that way. I prefer to do it this way. I've done it this way quite a lot. Now I'm not going very far. I could put a piece of tape on here and just give it a depth marker, but I'm not going to do that. It's just too tiny. And then a little screwdriver. Now this is quite difficult when you've got big pudgy fingers like mine. And I'm quite happy with that, so I'll go on to the next one. Do that again. I need to use my brad awl to mark the hole. I've got a little bit of tape in there that's annoying me. I'm just going to cut it out. Brad awl in the middle. As you can see, I take my time with it. I don't rush it, and what I'm doing is making sure that I've got it exactly right. I don't want to have to revisit here and try and repair the hole like I did with the screw hole for the hinge. Beautiful. Drill it. You see the screws are quite tiny. So those pudgy fingers again. Yep. I'll get it. There's lots of ways of doing this. I could have put a little bit of tape on the end of the screwdriver and actually tape the screw to the driver, but and there we have it. Okay. Take my little bit of tape off. I'm going to keep these bits of tape because I'll need them for the bottom section. Okay, So now you can see very flush on the bottom. We're flush with the edge of the box. That will just pop over and latch onto the other piece once we get that fitted. But as you can see, quite a nice fitting little lock. All right, now the other bit that goes on the bottom is quite easy to fit, because all we need to do with that bit is tape the whole thing in place. Yep. Clamp the box in, like so. There's my piece of tape on there. That bit of tape was just a tiny little bit too wide, so I might use a new bit. Cut that down. Like so, and then we go through the same process. Just make sure we're in the middle of the hole. Just check it. Like so. As you can see, I'm not pressing a hole really hard. I'm just trying to sort of make sure that we've got a point to guide the drill bit. Railway model shops. I never thought of those. That might be a good place to get those screws, tiny screws, and oh, this is going to look so good. Go back to here. Tiny hole, tiny screws. I need somebody with little fingers to do this. This is, there we go. I got it. Don't panic. Just make sure everything's down flush. Everything is nice and flush there. I'll take off my tape now. Oh. And there's my lock. A little bit tight. It's sitting down a little bit too far. I've got to readjust it. I didn't want to do that. Just I can do that later, but that's the technique anyway. so we end up with the lock in a nice little lock in the front place. So it'll come down. I'm not going to close it over again. The bottom one is actually shifted down onto one side, so I've got a little gap there. You can see that gap. So we need to fix that, and I'll do that afterwards. So I'm going to have to revisit the bottom one, but apart from that, the box is in basically finished state, ready for sanding. So my next task now is to get some sanding done and just put some finishing on. I'm not going to use this box because I've got to do some more work on the end of there. Oh, I can do it after I finish it, but I'd rather do it beforehand. So I'll put that one aside, and we'll do that one. Now what I'll do is I'll finish the other box. And this one hasn't got a latch on it, but I can put the latch on after I've got the finish on it. So I just want to go through the sanding process. I'm going to leave everything as it is at the moment, like my platform and everything. I'll do my sanding here rather than taking it over to the vise. We're running out of time again. As you can see, box making is not something that you just race through and get it done really quickly. It's something where you have to take a bit of time, settle, relax, just go with the flow. If something doesn't work, well then you have to fix it, all those sorts of things. It's just a matter of going through the processes and working out which ones work properly and which ones don't, and then work on those things. So no, we'll leave this on here, we'll need that. So sanding. My edges, what I like to do is I like to sand the whole box in one piece. So all my parts are still inside the box. What I just close it up, I clamp it to something. I have a clamp there, like so, and then I can sand quite successfully like that. If I was doing it by hand, of course I would have a range of different sandpapers. Now with this one here I've got 180 and it goes right through to 1000 grit. There's about 5 different grades there, and I'll work down through the grades. So while it's sitting like that, I can actually work on it. I have a sanding block. Make yourself a sanding block, or you can get yourself a cork one, and I can sand quite happily by just working the box like so. So what I'm actually doing is I'm working the top and the bottom together, so everything gets sanded, sand with the grain of course, and nice even strokes through the sandpaper. And I don't turn the box over until such time as I'm finished each of the panels. So the first panel gets a whole workout, so it'll get worked through the grades of sandpaper. So I've gone from 180, and the 180, what that will do, that will give you a working surface for all your other grades of sandpaper. It will take off pencil marks, tooling marks. It will flatten little lumps and bumps that might have occurred during the process of building the box. It will also take away any other heavy sandpaper marks that you may have used, or saw marks that you may have left on the job when you prep your timber. So your 180 will get rid of that. If the 180 doesn't get rid of it, well then you go back to a more coarse sandpaper. So you go to 100 or something like that, or 120. Generally, when I'm doing box making, I've got my material is sanded to about 240 before I even start. So it gives me a really good starting point for my sanding. And it's only pencil marks, tooling marks, and the like that I have to remove. Or if I've had to repair something, I can then fix up the repair as well. So it only has to be a light sandpaper. We then go from that, we have to remove those sandpaper marks from the 180 with a lighter grade. Now you could go to 600 or 1000, but it would take you forever to get rid of 180 grit sandpaper marks. So always work down through your grades. 240 is my next one, so that will get a workout. Again, I'm still working on the same side that I started with 180. I haven't turned it around and done all the bits and pieces. I'm only doing one panel, and I treat each panel as an individual panel. You might find that some of the purists say, well, if you've sanded it properly to begin with, and if you've planed it properly, you don't need to sand so much. Well, that's a bone of contention amongst some woodworkers, particularly those that don't have the tools to actually do all that smoothing out with smoothing planes and so forth. But hey, this gets a result that looks quite stunning. And so all I'm doing is I'm just working the sandpaper marks off. I've gone now to 320 grit or 360 grit. And I'm just checking, making sure I've got all my marks gone. I don't want anything on there that's going to show up when I put the finish on. And I just keep working with that. And the next grade down from that is 400 grit. Now all of these are dry sandpapers, the ones that I'm using at the moment. And if you go onto Fix It Fingers site, you'll see that he's done some fairly extensive reviews of various sandpapers and various tools to use them, which is quite interesting because everybody has a different perspective as to what sandpaper you need, how you want to use it, what it's going to be used for, and all those sorts of things. So sometimes it's time for you to experiment as well, rather than just taking the word of everybody else. And the reviews are really good because they give you a bit of an insight before you actually start playing around with it yourself. So now I've got a nice clean surface there, and I'm checking to see that I've got rid of all of my sandpaper marks. My next one is, that was 400. So I'm going to 800. Now 800 does not come in a dry sandpaper or a dry coat sandpaper, so that it can be used dry. The 800 that I get is wet and dry. Okay, so I can use it with water, I can use it with a sanding sealer, or I can use it with a finish, and it won't collapse. The glue that hold the particles onto this paper here is not waterproof, so therefore if you use it wet it will fall apart, whereas this one doesn't, and it can be used for all sorts of things. So I'm using 800. So once we get to the 800, we're not really doing a lot of sanding, we're doing a bit of burnishing this time. As you can imagine, the sandpaper is really fine, and for those of you who aren't aware, the 400, 800, the 180, that number designates the number of particles per square centimetre on your on the paper. So a square centimetre has 800 pieces. So you can imagine the higher the number, the smaller the particles to fill up the square centimetre. So that's how that works. Now we're up to 1000. So we're very fine. And when we get to 1000, we're probably at a point where we need to add some finish. Yeah, that's a very good point that Pammy's just made, is you can hear the sound that the sandpaper is actually doing. The coarse one tends to sort of rasp away, and the finer one tends to be a little bit more soft and a gentle sort of a feel. But if you look at that now, I'll just change the camera here for you. If you look at that now, you can see that I've almost got a sheen on it. And like, you can see a bit of it, but you can see the shadow, my shadow on my fingers. So you can see that, like, that hasn't taken a lot of effort. I hear all the time from people, sanding, that's the most boring, tedious. Like I said, box making is not something that you can rush through and get done quickly and have a good result. So now that I've done that side, all I'm going to do now is flick it over and do exactly the same thing. But this time I'm not going to use my hand sanding. If you don't have fancy equipment, then of course this is your best way to going about it. So what I'm going to do now, give me a couple of secs. Now this little gadget here is dust-free system. It's all good. Yeah. This is a dust-free system. This is my Merca. Now this Dios is probably for box making it's ideal. Number one, it's got a nice reasonably sized square pad. You can get the bigger one. It's fairly lightweight, it's plugged in, and dust port and so forth. It will give you a dust-free result. Now, the process that I do with this is exactly the same as I did when I did the end of it, only this time I'm using these mesh. We just bring that camera on there and have a look. We use a mesh sandpaper. You can see it's quite, you can actually see through it. And again, 600, 400, 320, so they're the grades, and 240. And 180. So I'm going through the same process with this sandpaper or that I did with the other one. So this is how we go about that one. This one makes a little bit more noise. Doesn't make that much that you have to put earmuffs on or anything like that. So just a matter of just wait for that to stop. Okay, so that stops. Now, it's just a matter of going through exactly the same process and not so much pressure. You don't have to move it very much because it's an orbital sander. If you're after one of these are sold by Japanese Tools. So there's a link, if you look down below, there's a link to Japanese Tools and you can get your Merca system from there and you can get the whole system. And there are a number of different sand discs or sanding tools that you can purchase with this system. Get your dust extractor. It will plug up to most other dust extractors as well. So really, really good. You don't need to spend as much time with this. It takes a little bit of the effort out of actually having to keep sanding all the time. And again, same process. Set up a panel and work with one panel and get that finished before you go on to the next one. So these are much easier to fiddle with. They're just a matter of on there like so. Okay, so that's down to 600 grit. Now, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, they don't make sandpaper down below 600 grit for this tool. So you need to go back to your sandpaper system to burnish it. Just shift that out of the way. And a little bit of 800. And a little bit of 1000. Now remember, somebody's going to own this box, and I want to be proud of the fact that I made it, and it's in the best condition that I can possibly do. So that's why I take the time. Okay, if you rush it, you're going to end up, and you can see when we look at that now. I'll just go back to the mobile camera. You can see that we've got the same sort of sheen. You can see my shadow of my fingers there on the box itself. So we got the same sort of sheen that I got when I did the side of it. Okay, so it's exactly the same. It didn't take us long, but we got the same result. The same will apply to the top of the box. We'll get the top of the box. You can actually sit that on there. You don't need to do too much to it, and then sand it till it's perfectly flat. Now, I'm going to go back to this other box. I'm going to pull the hinge off it. I've already sanded this one. This one's been sanded down to my screwdriver. I'm going to pull this lock off. I want to put some finish on it just to show you what it looks like. Now the lock will need to be readjusted, but I'm not too concerned about that. Just this bottom one is not in the right place. Bit of sandpaper just to tidy that up a little bit. Is it 400? I've just had to tidy those marks up. Okay, now when I put the finish on, I'll take the box apart. I'll just do the top section of this one for the moment, basically because I'm going to repair the bottom half. The box will get a coat of finish before it's completely assembled. And don't forget, when you take your hinges off, make sure that you have them marked left and right, because you want them to go back in exactly the same spot. Okay, there's all my parts. There's that panel. And I'm going to shift all of this stuff because I don't need all of this stuff on my desk. Now the finish that I'm going to put on here is Livos oil, countertop oil. Now, Jimmy Carroll has this stuff on in his store, so if you jump on the link below, you can actually get this stuff from him. It's quite nice. I'm going to put a platform on here, like so. Back to my vise. Just lock things so nothing moves for me. And there we have it. And so now my box, and this is the top part, is all ready for a finish. Now, with the finish, this is the finish that I'm using. So Livos countertop oil. I don't think the big green shed carries it, so you may need to go to a specialist finishing place. Can't say that I've chased around looking for it in the big green shed, but so when you look at this, you can see it. I already had this finished and sanded, and I was going to finish it, but I found that screw hole. So I'm not overdoing it. Any old cheap brush. These ones here are one-use brushes that I use. You can see now how nice that looks once you've got a bit of finish on it. It's actually come up absolutely beautifully. Need to put a pair of gloves on for the next bit. So look, that banks here looks like it'll fit together with the rest of the rest of the colour of the timber of the box. So now we do a little bit more. Gosh, we're running out of time already. I expected to have this all done by today. Obviously, it's not going to happen. Now, if you've asked a question on the feed, on the live chat, sorry if I haven't answered any of those. I generally don't get time to look at that. So what happens now? Now, we're going to take a couple of weeks off, unfortunately, because I need to prep for the next project. And the next project is going to be quite a large box, and I'll explain that a bit later. But I need to prepare for it, and I need to get the timber in, and being locked down, it's going to be difficult to try and get things coming and going, as you may be aware. So we'll take a couple of weeks off, and when we come back, I'll have these boxes finished, and I'll show you what they look like when they're all polished up and nice and shiny, and then we'll go on to the next project. So back to this, the coat of finish that I've put on there, I just let it sit and let it settle for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then give it a really good polish, and just take off the excess. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to let the box just sit for a few hours and just let it settle. You can see, and this is the difference between that and, where's the other box? The difference between those two. You can see that is really, really, really nice. I know we're going over time a little bit, but I need to show you this. See how nice that is? Just gives it that glow. Now what will happen is I will let that sit for a while, and then I will give it another coat. But the next time I give it a coat, what I'm going to use is my 1000 grit sandpaper that I had here somewhere. I'll use a piece of 1000 grit sandpaper, and I will sand the whole of the surface of it so that I get rid of anything that happens. Because once you get timber wet, you raise the grain, you need to get that fluory stuff off, so that will happen. When that happens, I will then give it another good coat of sanding sealer, not sanding sealers, Livos oil, and it will come up like this. If Pammy, would you just grab me that other box there? I'll just show you this last little thing. I made a little box during the week for somebody, and what we call a little container for cutlery, and this one here has had its second coat, and you can see it just comes up beautifully just with a little bit of effort, a little bit of work. That's had 2 coats on it. This has had the one. This one, you can see it's a little bit more dull than that one there, and a bit hard to see, but you can see on the edge of here, you can see that's really, really nice how it looks. So these little containers, they're going to get 2 or 3 coats, and they'll look quite nice when they're finished. So that's going to be it for today, and I'm going to finish off the boxes. If you're going over to Dave, probably you've already gone. He's creating a door jamb with a lift-out panel on it, so that could be quite an interesting project that he's having a go at. So flick over to him, have a look, and see how it goes, and I will see you all in a couple of weeks, the 5th of September. Now, if you're in lockdown, please stay safe, and we'll try and do the same. So, catch you all again.